broken down some of the roster, some of the key offensive positions, but what really would have happened if these two would have met at Rice-Eccles Stadium first Thursday in September? What do we think happens? Does Utah extend the streak to 10, which would have been the longest streak for either team? Do you guys think that Utah would have extended this? Cole, we'll jump to you.
Utah continues the streak. If they were to play, I think it would be a close one because that's just how these games are. It doesn't matter. That's what makes the Holy War so special. It doesn't matter if one of the teams is ranked in the top 25, even the top 15 or top 10, and the other one isn't. It's just it's the rivalry, and it's what makes it so special. And we've talked about that before, but Utah's offense is far superior to BYU's, especially with Bushman going down. Now, I do think BYU's defense, I think that's where they're a little bit better than Utah, especially with all the players Utah lost in the draft this last year. Despite that, turnovers would be the name of the game for me. And as we know, Wilson likes to make some bad decisions. He lets that pressure get to him. I think our defense would be able to get those turnovers coming from the BYU side. And within probably a possession, I think Utah would have kept that streak going and pushed it to 10.
Yeah, so Cole mentioned it'd be a close game. Hard to disagree with that. I think it'd also be close, as they always are. And another common theme from these games, the Holy War games, seems to be turnovers, which you also mentioned. And I think that has to do with the emotions that come with this game, right? A lot of times the players let the emotions get the best of them and they lose the mental aspect of the game, and that's when mistakes come in. However, and I think that's a big reason that BYU has lost in the past, especially the past few years with a younger team. They haven't known what to do with those emotions, whereas Utah has allowed those emotions to drive them, to be more aggressive, to make the play. On BYU's side, the emotions have made them make mistakes or slip up or forget about things and get a little too passionate but use it the wrong way. However, I think that's where things would have changed this year with what I mentioned was a much more experienced team. I think, with Zach Wilson being a junior, with having that experienced defense as well, we've got Isaiah Kafusi, a senior linebacker, leading the defense, Kairos Tonga as well on the defensive line. I think that veteran experience would have taken over, and they wouldn't have allowed the emotions to affect them as negatively as they have in the past couple of years.
I think it would have been a really close game also, but here's the thing that I think this game would have been solved. Like turnovers and emotions factored in as well. This game would have been won in the trenches. I want to see how a relatively younger Utah offensive line would have stacked up against that BYU defensive line. You already mentioned Kairos Tonga. He's a madman. Like, he can get in there. He was destroying Navy's offensive line the last time that you guys played on Labor Day. I think that would have been won in the trenches on both sides. I also want to see how a relatively younger Utah defensive line would have went up against this prized offensive line that BYU has. That offensive line is legit at BYU. I'm not diminishing the fact that ours is also legit, but that's a good offensive line. Zach doesn't look like he's taking that much pressure, but I would have loved to see how Utah's defensive linemen reacted, because a couple of the guys on that line have played in this game before. Mika Tafua, Max Tupai, those guys have played in this game, so they know what's on the line. And I'm pretty sure they would tell the other guys and get them in that position. But this game would have been won in the trenches. Which quarterback is under the most pressure? Because when you're making those throws under pressure, you're more likely to throw those interceptions that we talked about.
It would be interesting to see, if Bentley was taking the snaps, how Bentley would come into this game. Would he feel some of that pressure? Would he kind of come into it and say, I'm the outside guy, I'm a little nervous to play in this game, I've never experienced? Or would he come into it as, this is just another game for me? For him, BYU is not an opponent I don't think he's ever played. And he hasn't had a whole lot of exposure, to them. So it would be interesting. And I think the X factor would be Bentley to see, can he take this onslaught of wide receivers and tight ends and really just take advantage and tip the scale in Utah's favor and beat that oiled machine defense that BYU has. I mean, BYU does have a fantastic defense. Caleb, you mentioned a couple of players. Isaiah Kafusi, I actually went to high school with that guy. What's funny is he played wide receiver in high school, and they've just beefed him up. They've he's put on a lot of weight, and he is fantastic. I think he's a guy that could be an NFL prospect. And so those are probably the two X factors for me is, does Bentley take control of the Utah offense, or does Isaiah Kafusi in his senior year finally get that W against Utah, that very coveted W? But